Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, and then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be The Lion King, number 2 would be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, number 3 would be Spider-Man Far From Home, number 4 would be Toy Story 4, and number 5 would be Crawl. And I got all 5 of my predictions right for this weekend, and so did a bunch of you, so a bunch of you are going to be getting a shout out right now. I compiled it all onto this one little image for the video just to get it out of the way. Congrats to all of you guys, we did it. So now let's move on to what happened in the overall top 10. Number 1 was, of course, The Lion King once again, having about a 60% drop. It made $75 million this weekend. That adds to a domestic total of $350 million. Now, domestically, it's $14 million away from outgrossing Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book, which will then make it his highest grossing film on his filmography list, which is pretty insane to think about. And worldwide, it needs only $4 million more to do that. So it's already doing fantastically there, because worldwide, it is sitting at $962 million. That is $38 million away from $1 billion already. And yes, that does mean that domestically it has outgrossed Aladdin's entire domestic run, which is pretty spectacular to think about. But then again, this movie had a bigger opening, obviously, and this has more appeal towards that film, whereas Aladdin had a little bit more flack to it before it came out. As far as the original movie's numbers go, it needs $72 million more domestically to outgross the original animation, and worldwide it needs $6 million more to do that. So this movie is obviously about to break a ton more records as the weeks go by, which is obviously fantastic if you worked on this film, or if you are one of the people that did like it. But I do take notice that the 60% drop might have to do with the fact that the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes aren't that good, and maybe people that saw it and didn't like it are spreading the word to others, like, hey, this movie's just not as good. But, you know, audiences, according to Rotten Tomatoes, seem to be really enjoying it as far as the overall consensus goes. So a little open-ended there as far as what the 60% drop is attributed to, but I have my own theories. I'm sure we all have about the same theories as far as that goes, but either way, it's still making a ton of money, so it doesn't really matter. Number 2 was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which made $40 million this weekend on a budget of $90 million. It doesn't have a worldwide total as of right now, but I'm sure there will be more as the weeks go by, and this is a really great opening, not just because its budget is $90 million, it needs about $180 to be considered a success, and I think the combined domestic and worldwide totals will definitely get it there, but this is also the highest opening weekend that Quentin Tarantino has ever had, his previous one being Inglourious Basterds, if I remember correctly, which is just fantastic that this film, his 9th one, is his highest opening weekend ever for a film. I think this might be able to convince him that there are still audiences that want to see his story, so maybe he won't quit like he's been kind of hinting at, like, maybe number 9 is where I'll quit. Maybe he'll actually go for the number 10 this time. At least I can hope so, if you're a fan of Tarantino like myself. And I'm just really happy to see that this movie, despite it opening up with The Lion King, which is a lot of competition, and the fact that it's also going to be competing against Hobbs and Shaw, that there's still a large majority of people that are willing to go out and see this film. Number 3, we have Spider-Man Far From Home, making $12 million, adding to a domestic total of $344 million, and domestically it is $29 million away from outgrossing Spider-Man 2 as far as on the rankings go, which would make it the second highest grossing Spider-Man film domestically. Worldwide, it is sitting at $1,036 million, and yes, that does mean that this movie is not just the highest grossing Spider-Man film worldwide, but it is the first one to hit $1 billion, which is just fantastic. The fact that it's also joined the MCU's $1 billion club as well, like that's something really special. The fact that we finally have a Spider-Man film that has been able to do that, which is just phenomenal. I'm really hoping that it does make enough money to outgrow Spider-Man 2, not because I think this movie is better than Spider-Man 2, because I don't, but really just because of the achievement of it all, just to see that the love for this character is about the same as it's always been. That would just be a really cool thing to see. It would need to get past $403 million, though, to surpass the first Spider-Man film domestically, so whether it does that or not is definitely up in the air. Number 4, we have Toy Story 4, making $9 million, adding to a domestic total of $395 million. That's $5 million away from getting to $400 million domestically, which is fantastic, and that means it would have $20 million away from outgrossing Toy Story 3, which I think is a pretty high probability right now, but worldwide it is sitting at $917 million, and that's not just $83 million away from getting to $1 billion, which it very well could do, but it's also $150 million away from outgrossing Toy Story 3, so the chances of it getting to surpass Toy Story 3 are still very high, but it still might take a while to officially determine if it's actually going to get there or not. So right now the chances domestically are looking stronger than ever. Worldwide, we might need a little bit more time with that. Number 5, we have Crawl, making $4 million, adding to a domestic total of $31 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $45 million, which is obviously fantastic. It was able to triple that $13.5 million budget, which is great for this movie, a low-budget horror thriller that is more simple but is still fun, and audiences are kind of recognizing that, and the horror audiences out there that want to see this are making their way towards it, which is fantastic, obviously. Number 6 is Yesterday, making $3 million, adding to a domestic total of $63 million, and worldwide it is sitting at $109 million. So congrats to Yesterday, a film that opened up pretty low as far as its opening weekend goes, was able to worldwide make over $100 million. As much as I think the movie is kind of more mediocre, the fact that it was able to do that despite having a pretty disappointing opening, I would say, is still pretty good. Now, once again, whether that has to do with AMC Artisan or not, completely up in the air, but hey, this movie is doing fantastically for itself, and that's something worth celebrating if you're a fan of the film, or if there are people out there that worked on the film that are really proud of it. It quadrupled its $26 million budget, which is fantastic. Number 7, we have Aladdin, making $2 million, adding to a domestic total of $345 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $1.9 billion at the box office right now, which is obviously a really great thing to see if you're a big fan of this movie. It was able to surpass the billion margin, which is very good. Obviously, Lion King is quickly catching up, though, which kind of shows that the Lion King has more fan appeal to it, as I mentioned before, but the fact that Aladdin kind of opened up, and we didn't really expect it to make this much, but it did, it kind of defied all our expectations. That's still something to be kind of amazed by, at least. Number 8, we have Stuber, making $1.6 million, adding to a domestic total of $20 million, and worldwide it is sitting at $25 million. So it's only $7 million away from doubling its $16 million budget. I think it would need to make a little bit over that limit, though, in order to be considered a success, at least to them, and it's also probably about to leave the top 10 before it even gets there, and it's losing a lot of audiences, so I really don't expect it to. Number 9, we have Annabel Comes Home, making $1.56 million, adding to a domestic total of $69 million, and worldwide it is sitting at $207 million. So congrats to this movie. It was able to surpass the $200 million limit worldwide, which is obviously fantastic for the movie if you're a fan of it. Like I kind of am. I think it's a really solid horror film. It's obviously still not the highest grossing one. It's been able to slowly kind of catch up, but it's not really anywhere near the other films. But hey, it's a limited budget of like $30 million at the most, and they were able to make a profit off of it. So at the end of the day, they're still pretty successful. And finally, closing out the video, number 10, The Farewell, an A24 indie film whose budget I don't know of at the moment, but it made $1.55 million, adding to a domestic total of $3 million. And the fact that this movie isn't even in that many theaters, but it was able to crack the top 10, is still something worth mentioning. Like, that's a really great thing to see. Maybe it'll get a wider release next weekend, or hopefully the week after that, because I didn't see it playing near any of my theaters nearby, so maybe that's a next week thing, but I'm not really sure. But, you know, if more people go out to see this film in the coming future, that'd be really great too. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I'm going to predict Hobbs and Shaw. Number 2, The Lion King. Number 3, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Number 4, Spider-Man Far From Home. And number 5, Toy Story 4. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.